Hi everyone, this is Jackie from Project Piaba. So this week's activity that we're going to show you guys is called Superfish. And this is more of a critical thinking, research, and creative activity, as opposed to last week's activity, which was more of a science experiment. But I'm still planning to incorporate the science activity that we did last week into this one. And if you didn't do that one, that's fine. I can catch you up later. But so basically, like every activity that we're going to be showing you here, we want you to be able to scale it up or down to hit whatever needs you have for the kids, the students, the activity doers that you're doing this activity with. So feel free to adjust it, adapt it, and scale it up or down. And when I say adapt it, I'm kind of leading into what we're going to talk about. So today we're talking about adaptations. So an adaptation is, and if we read the actual biological definition of it, it is a change or the process of change by which an organism or species becomes better suited for its environment. So when we think about adaptations in fish, right, I always, because of Project Piaba, like to focus on Rio Negro fishes because they have a very specific type of habitat. The water that they live in is very dark, it's very acidic, it's very different than the habitat of, say, you know, the Hudson River or Boston Harbor or any other local types of habitats that you want to think of, but yet they're the same. They're water and fish live in them, right? But those fish have special adaptations or processes within their body and also behaviors and things that they do that make them better suited to that environment. So I've made a short video that I'm going to show you about fish adaptations, and I will be right back with you in a second. Some fish have fancy patterning on their bodies that help confuse predators, like this butterfly fish with this giant spot on its fin that looks sort of like an eye, might confuse a predator into not knowing which end is the face. And other fish like this flounder are adapted to lay flat, and that way they can hide really well, half buried in the sand. They don't even look like a fish. Some fish have special sucker mouths that they use to hold on to rocks, branches, or any kinds of things like that and prevent them from being swept away in the current. And they also have these special sucker mouths that allow them to eat particular types of food, like the algae and stuff that grow on rocks and branches and things like that. And the electric eel lives in naturally very dark and muddy water, so their eyes don't do them much good. They have very small eyes because of this, but they use their electric senses to sense their surroundings and to find and kill their prey. Fish like this lungfish are able to actually breathe air off of the surface of the water, and this allows them to live in lower oxygen environments. That's a pretty cool adaptation. Sea dragons are masters of camouflage. They look just like the seaweed that they live in. I bet you know what this fish's special adaptation is. When he gets bothered by something, he can puff up. That makes it much harder for a predator to swallow him. And those are just some more notable fish adaptations. There are so many adaptations that fish have to help them better survive in their environments. And those are just like the obvious ones that we can see. There's all kinds of like behind the scenes biological things, like for example, freshwater fish and saltwater fish differ in their ability to handle salt and thus balance the chemistry within their own bodies. And that's like a really highly in-depth ichthyological type of study that we're not even going to really get into in this particular project. But feel free to look that up because there are so many cool things about that. And actually I'll show you, I have a link to a neat thing that I found on the internet that I'll share with you later. And so I wanted to show you the Superfish activity is based upon what you've just learned about adaptations that fish have to help them survive in their environments and in their habitats. I would like you to design your own superfish. So for the superfish, it's not a real fish, right? This is a fish that you are inventing on your own using what you know about habitats and adaptations. So first things first, you want to think of your habitat that your fish lives in. So the fish that I chose to show you this activity, this fish lives in a deep, calm lake, and the bottom of the lake is kind of muddy. And that's important for my fish because that impacts what that fish needs to adapt to in order to do the things that fish need to do, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and show you my fish. So here's my fish. I created a fish out of stuff that I have laying around the house. So when I said that this is a creative activity, I mean like it's a creative activity, right? So you're not just coming up with the fish. I want you to actually make it because that's the fun part. And I used to be sort of a crafting queen. I have this whole bucket of craft gear. I have like, you know, foam pumpkins and you know, X-Acto knives and crayons and markers and googly eyes and things like that. I used almost none of that stuff to do this activity because I was thinking about what my fish habitat was in. And, you know, it doesn't make sense for you to be brightly colored if you're going to live down in the mud, you know, in the deep water. So I actually went with a paper napkin body. Whoa, sorry, fish. With a paper napkin body. And he's got some kind of long spines on his fins, right, that kind of help protect him a little bit if something bad happens to him and somebody tries to eat him. He's got little catfish whiskers that help him to sense around in the mud. And actually the coolest part of this fish that I thought was a really neat adaptation and a defining feature of this superfish is that he actually has, can you see this? He's got like a little spoon mouth, right? So this is a plastic spoon that is his mouth, and he actually uses this to dig around in the mud to find his prey. So he eats little invertebrates and things that he finds down in the mud and can actually dig around really well with his spoon mouth. And he also digs little burrows to hide in. So this is a little toilet paper tube, right? I bet we all have these laying around our house right now. But so he actually will dig a tube and hide in it, and that's where he has his young. So builds a nest and everything. So I designed my superfish. Those are the adaptations that it has. Oh, and I almost forgot, he has inside, I wanted to put a balloon, but I didn't have any balloons, so it's actually like a little plastic bag that he can actually inflate himself if somebody tries to eat him or pull him out of his burrow. He can actually inflate himself and prevent from being pulled out. So that's a pretty cool adaptation for this fish. And the only thing at the end of the day that I used out of my craft bin was half of a foam pumpkin to make the fins and googly eyes, because, you know, if you have googly eyes, why not put them on your superfish? So, and the rest is all like twist ties, like bread ties and a paper napkin from McDonald's, and a plastic spoon. So that is my superfish. And the other thing that I did that I would definitely like you to do is to create a poster about your superfish, right? So here's the critical thinking part of the activity. I want you thinking about what your fish does, where your fish lives, what your fish eats, and how your fish does the things that it needs to do as a fish. And then here's the research part of this activity. I would like you to go to, if you have like an encyclopedia or like wildlife fact file or some kind of thing like that, that's great. But if you don't, we do have the internet at our fingertips. And I would certainly like you to Google responsibly. And if you're a younger student, definitely have your parents or your adult help you with this. But so here's the thing that I wanted to definitely show you. But this is an article from the Scripps Institute about fish adaptations, and you know, it's pretty basic, but it's also really cool. So it's definitely worth looking into. And so then I went and I took the adaptations that I've built into my superfish, and I researched fish that actually have these adaptations. And this is the part that you can really scale up or down depending on the types of, or depending on the ages, the abilities, and the willingness of your activity doers here. So I just kind of Googled fish that dig holes, and then you come up with like lungfish, and then, you know, if you scroll down a little bit, you get, you know, all kinds of things about fish that dig. And so I would definitely challenge you to come up with a couple of different types of fish that do the types of things that your superfish does, and add that to your superfish poster. I also checked up on fish with whiskers, and then you get all kinds of articles about catfish and what the barbels do and how they have taste buds, and stuff like that. Fish that inflate, and you get articles about that. And so that's pretty cool. So that's the part of this activity that I really want you thinking about from like a critical thinking type of standpoint here. And please definitely add that to your Superfish poster, the stuff that you find out in the research part of this project. What types of fish actually have the adaptations that your Superfish has, and how do those adaptations actually help that fish. That's definitely one thing that I want you thinking about. So then last week we had done a sort of more habitat themed science activity where we talked about blackwater and water clarity. And I had shown you how to make 5 gallons of tea in a bucket in your bathtub. And so if you haven't seen that activity, go ahead and watch it. It's kind of fun. At least I enjoyed it. And so this is the tank that I used for that. I'm going to move my computer away from the 2.5 gallons of tea that I have made. And I'm going to slide this up so that you can see it. So in this case, I just used 5 tea bags because I didn't want to be as patient and let it sit overnight. So I put 5 tea bags, and this is just black tea, like tea that you would drink, but not when it's in a fish tank because that's gross. But so 5 gallons of tea, or 2.5 gallons of tea in whatever kind of clear tank that you have, a mason jar, a flower vase, a cheese ball container, whatever you have. I just really like this tank. And so we looked last time about how camouflage works or doesn't mean anything really in blackwater environments. So you have fish that are very brightly colored, but because of the habitat that they live in, that doesn't really impact them in terms of needing to be camouflaged. Let me just get my tea bags out of here so you can see this. So you've got these brightly colored fish, but it doesn't matter because they're still hard to see in the darker water. So then it would be really cool, I mentioned last time that it would be cool to try with different types of fish in the water, right? Take your Superfish, see, you can actually sort of see him a little bit better than you can the cardinal tetras. But this fish is more adapted to a deeper water habitat, and he actually burrows in the mud, and that helps him to avoid his predators. So different types of habitats, right? And if you feel like making the blackwater again because it's fun to make, a giant tank of tea every once in a while, go ahead and, feel free to make different types of fish and try to see what their camouflage looks like or doesn't look like in the tea water. So that's our activity for this week, and I would definitely love, if you do the Superfish activity, I would love to see pictures of whatever creative fishes that you come up with, and definitely I would also love to see your Superfish posters because I think that that's really, really interesting and really fun. Let's share what we come up with together. So definitely follow along and post any pictures or posters that you come up with on Project Piaba's Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube comments. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.